My previous documentaries on the economy of India surprised many people around the world. For many of them, it was something unexpected, unbelievable, shocking, and also eye-opening. Well, it's not entirely their fault, as over the years, the international mainstream media mostly fed them one-sided stories from India about its poverty, slums, and all other problems. Should we just blindly believe that the international media has been doing it innocently? Or should we question if they have a hidden agenda? Don't you think that we deserve to know the complete truth before we form our opinion about a country? When hearing the truth starts to shock you, it's a sign that you must start questioning the system around you. It's time that you open your senses and mind and evolve your brain before you become the victim of the media with vested interests. It's time that you realize that the international mainstream media, which is supposed to increase your awareness, is actually making you more unaware and willingly keeping you in the dark. Today, India is the fastest growing major economy of our planet. And do not be surprised, because it had always been the biggest economy of the world right through the human history until it was looted by its invaders and colonizers. Yet many of us around the world have no clue about it. Well, there are many reasons behind it, and one of the biggest reasons is the role of the international media. After India got its independence in 1947, its colonizers did everything that was in their power to prove to the world that India could not self-sustain itself without them. They wanted to prove to the world that they were in India for a good reason. The looters wanted the world to falsely believe that they were the saviors of India. Pushing India into a civil war right after the independence was just the beginning, because the next steps that were going to be taken were no less dangerous. And those steps were to control the global news and form the incorrect opinion of the world's citizens and also their own people about India, and to achieve a fake goodwill in order to justify their unethical stay in India. The truth is that what the colonizers did to India during their rule, they continued the same even after their departure from India. But this time it was done by their media. And that is why highlighting only the uglier side of India, its problems, its poverty, its social issues started. But these colonizers never mentioned that many of those problems were actually given to India by them. By doing this, they desperately tried to prove that India was anyway a country full of problems, and their stay in India was justified. It is the biggest irony when the robbers, after robbing a house, start to complain about the poor condition of the house that they just robbed, and showcase it to the world by their institutions like media, who get formed and powered by the very same newly acquired looted wealth from the very same country which they are going to criticize. By controlling the media, they successfully control the minds of their own people and also form the opinions that they desired among the world's citizens by establishing global media houses. Largely, they have been successful in this strategy, as they have been able to not just form a wrong opinion on India of the world's citizens, but also they were able to falsely educate few of the citizens of their former colonies as well. And today, a few of the citizens of these former colonies shockingly believe that the colonizers did good to them. The fact is that, very cleverly, these colonizers still managed to influence and run academic institutions and schools in their formal colonies, which fed the same propaganda to the future generation of their formal colonies, creating sympathy in the hearts of some of the innocent citizens for their ex-colonizers. And simultaneously, the same propaganda was also backed by the international news agencies originating from the land of the colonizers. You will be shocked to know that today, if the mainstream international media start to give the equal coverage to the development stories of India, just like the coverage that they give to the poverty, rapes and other problems of India, it can hurt a lot of their own people back home, can easily create unrest in the Western societies, and potentially even topple some of the Western governments. Shocking, isn't it? Let me tell you the reason behind this. The fact is that by showing the poorer side of India and also other Eastern countries, the Western countries want to show their citizens that they are living in the better part of the world, by giving them a fake, proud and satisfying feeling, by creating an atmosphere of a feel-good factor so that their citizens are less likely to complain or revolt against their government or protest against the system. The strategy of the Western countries is simple. If you can't improve the conditions in your country, make sure that you criticize the others, because that also can help to keep the citizens calm and somehow satisfied. By deliberately keeping them in the dark and by feeding such negative stories from the other side of the world, the citizens of the so-called developed world come under the impression that they are so lucky to belong to the better side of the world, and it helps those governments to rule its people. But finally, this old strategy is increasingly becoming less effective because one can't suppress the truth for too long. And that is visible in the increasing numbers of protests and revolts that have been taking place in the West against the government due to unemployment, economic crisis, and other serious issues. The riots that took place in the UK in 2011 was just one small example of the anger and unrest among the citizens of these Western countries, whether it's Europe or America. The truth is that the whole so-called developed world is facing a terrible economic crisis from the last few years, which is very less likely to be properly fixed. And what is even worse is that its citizens are getting to know the truth and are increasingly getting to know the development of the other side of the world by traveling around the world, by the rise of the social media, which they can't still fully control, and also by the people-to-people interaction around the world. And thus, a long-kept secret by the Western governments and the Western media is finally starting to be exposed, and the people of the Western world are slowly starting to complain and rise against their governments, as they are slowly starting to realize that they are not living in the best part of the world anymore. And that is why the Western governments and their controlled media are trying the last-ditch attempt to delay this unrest by strongly feeding them the negative news of the Eastern world. And that includes a lot from India as well. And it is because India is believed to be the next rising economic powerhouse of the world. The brainwashing of the citizens of the Western world is done in many ways by their own media. For example, one must realize that there is no point to compare the average salaries of two countries when one country has artificially kept its currency overvalued and one has kept it undervalued. Also, how can one compare the salaries of two countries when the cost of living in one country is so much lower than the other? But they do show them such examples. And that is just one little thing that I mentioned. We must realize it is not just about what we earn. It is also about what we are able to save. The truth is that an average Indian is able to save more than an average European, even though India has a rapidly growing consumer market. There are many tea and samosa stall owners in India who make more money than many white-collar employees of the West, even without taking into account the factors like currency difference and the cost of living. Do you still think that the mainstream international media would want to cover such success stories from the streets of India? No, they wouldn't, because it can create an anger or frustration among their own people and can negatively affect the superiority complex of these Western world citizens that has been built by their media over the years. On the other hand, human psychology is such that the negative news tend to create more attention because it brings more page views, increasing the numbers of TRPs, which further increase the earnings of these media houses. And it's not just that. For many of the Western news agencies and the journalists from the West, India is just too complicated to be properly understood. Not all of them have their eyes and minds to understand the complex economics which start from the slums of India. The slums, which on the other hand are also a hub of low-cost entrepreneurship. They completely fail to understand how on the sidelines a giant informal economy of India also functions parallel to its formal economy. But there are a few more reasons that exist. We must remember that India is a vibrant democracy where people enjoy the maximum freedom, unlike the communist countries, and also the level of freedom that citizens of India enjoy is far better than any other Western democracy that I know. India's media is enjoying the maximum freedom by its government that is second to none. India can easily be called the most transparent country in the world because India does not hide its bad sides like other countries, as the Chinese did by covering up their slums and poor areas during the Olympics that were held in Beijing in 2008. Just to give you a small example. Indians are silently continuing their journey to reclaim their ancient glory without making much noise, because they rather believe in actions, and that is why you are seeing this side of India from someone like me, who is not an Indian. It's time for us to understand that Indians do deserve an acknowledgement by us for their role in taking care of humanity in the past and their willingness to do it in the future. And this is why I have arrived in front of you, having had enough of the biased news circulating about India around the world. And I will be showing all sides of India to you. From the perspective of an outsider who is living in India, I will reintroduce India to all of you. From the best of my ability, I will be showing you the true India that you all deserve to know. It's time to accept that it is the fault of the world's media if you are getting to know from me that India has successfully launched a space mission to the Mars. It is the fault of the media of your country if you are getting to know from me that Indian companies are major employers of the citizens of the UK. It is the fault of the media of your country if they did not tell you about the modern mega infrastructure that India has already built and it is continuing even further. It is the vested interest of your country's media if they did not tell you that India is the software capital of the world. It is biased reporting of your country's media if they gave the maximum coverage to India's slums and poverty. It is because the state-run media of your country is afraid to tell you that in how many fields India is already ahead of the rest of the world, even after all those invasions and loot that it suffered from its colonizers and invaders. It is the fault of your country's media if they fail to give enough coverage to this side of India, which you are seeing right now on this documentary. And most importantly, the development that India is witnessing is not limited to its one state or a city. It is all over the country, changing the landscapes and lifestyle of its metropolises, towns, and villages. But India's rise is not a threat to any country or to the environment, as India still has a very low carbon footprint. Such is the gentle and responsible behavior of India that nobody in the world has sleepless nights or fear of India's nuclear weapons. And people of the world must realize that we need India to rise, because we all can benefit from its economy and also from its ancient wisdom. I am not trying to suggest that India has absolutely no poor people or no problems of her own. But the same also cannot be claimed by China, Europe or the USA. It is just that the world media has failed to show the both sides of India and has purposely given almost no coverage to the developed side of this country. India knows that it has not been treated fairly by the international mainstream media. 1.3 billion people of India know that if they wish, they can make enough noise in the world about it. But that is not their character, because these 1.3 billion people have been progressing silently, as they are well aware that sooner or later the truth that the world media has been hiding will be too difficult to hide. The truth that is visible in the major all-round growth that is happening all over India, the truth that is visible in the sweat of its farmers and in the brains of its corporate sector, the truth that is visible in the fact that India is the only country in the world which, even after all the loot by the invaders, has reconstructed and rebuilt its wealth by its hard-earned money, not by selling crude oil, not by colonization, and not by being the biggest arms exporter, but by its sheer hard work, morals, and by the wealth of its ancient Vedic wisdom. It's the same truth that is also visible in the ancient temples of India, where the Sanskrit mantra Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu is still chanted every day, as India remains a unique country that not only prays for its own well-being, but for the entire world and mankind. See you again.